my name is Maeve Delargy and I am the current chairperson of the IWLA. This is my last gala, so it's a funny one as chair, but it's been brilliant and I'm so glad we decided to do this. I do want to welcome you all very warmly to this event. It's the IWLA 2020 Dine-In this year. I have to say it's a lot easier to get you all quiet over Zoom. So I think I might say to the Law Society next year to, invest in some muting buttons just to allow the speakers to be heard. As I said, we're joined by lots of familiar faces. I know that I saw Minister Josepha Madigan there, Nolene Blackwell, our dear friend from the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre. Miss Justice Mary Irvine, I know, was hoping to attend, and of course Senator Ivana Bacik, who we'll hear from later on. So usually I'd be giving some housekeeping pointers at this stage about emergency exits, and obviously that's not relevant tonight, but I would like to do just a tiny bit of Zoom housekeeping. I know we're all quite used to it now, but I learned something new yesterday, so maybe you will too. You're all on mute at the moment, as I said, and we ask that you do remain on mute just for this part, but there will be time later if anybody wants to contribute. But there is an option to kind of show your appreciation with applauses or things like that. I'm on an iPad and I can see at the top right hand corner there's a more button, and it gives me a thumbs up and a clap and various things like that. So it may be on a laptop at the bottom of your screen, but the reaction buttons are nice. And then just please feel free to use the chat function and use it to pose questions. There's people here from the committee to monitor that and pull out questions for our honorees and awardees later on. But then also just use it, if there's somebody you want to say hi to, if there's a message for the group, this is a fun event. We do very serious things in this organization, and this is a night for celebrating and for just gathering together. So please do feel free to use the chat function for that. So as I say, we're delighted you could join us this evening. It's not our usual venue, but as usual, everyone is looking wonderful. We did debate on the committee whether to have this event, and it was clear even from before our AGM in July that if it did go ahead this year, it would be in a very different format. But then we thought about the year we've had and felt we couldn't miss out on the opportunity to mark some very important events. It's 20 years since the amazing Women in Law conference in Dublin Castle, which was largely organised by the late Twinkle Egan and which really kicked off IWLA as an organisation. It's 30 years, as you'll have seen from our social media, that since the first female president of Ireland, Mary Robinson, was elected. She's also an IWLA honoree and a lawyer. It is the first time, as you know, that there has ever been a woman elected as Vice President of the United States, also a lawyer. And it is the first time that there's ever been a female president of the Law Society and a female chair of the Bar Council at the same time. That also happened this year, and that is the reason why we're here this evening. You may not know, and I only found out myself yesterday, that the idea of the IWLA Women Lawyer of the Year award was the brainchild of former chairperson Maura Butler. We're missing Maura tonight because she is grieving the recent loss of her mother. We miss her, and we're thinking of her this evening. The first gala dinner was in 2011, and for the first few years, they honoured the firsts that were happening in the profession. The first celebration was for Maura Whelan, who was the first woman Attorney General. The following year in 2012, there was a lot of firsts. They honoured President Robinson, as I said, Claire Loftus as the DPP, the Chief State Solicitor. 2013, there was the first as Miss Justice Lafoy and Miss Justice Dunn were appointed to the Supreme Court. And then in 2014, there was the first IWLA Woman Lawyer of the Year. And we do have a brilliant video created by Jane from our junior member subcommittee that we're going to show you a bit later, showcasing all the former winners of this award. And, we're so glad that this year we're able to carry on that tradition and that there will be an IWLA Woman Lawyer of the Year 2020. And in fact, there'll be two. So something that has happened in Gala's past is introducing the current committee, who are usually spread around the room at different tables and entertaining guests and bringing people together. And we would also take the opportunity to say goodbye and thank you to former committee members. And this year again, I didn't want to miss out on the opportunity to thank two wonderful women who have given so much to this organisation. Aisling Gannon joined the committee in 2018 and from the very start played an invaluable role, using her contacts to help IWLA and using her experience to help the committee, bringing influential people to IWLA events and bringing IWLA events and initiatives to the attention of influential people. Thank you, Aisling. I think she's here tonight and I hope she received our flowers as a small token of our thanks and appreciation for everything. And 2 years before that, in 2016, Cathy Smith joined the committee. And from every day of her time with IWLA, she was a wonderful committee member and a support. For me, her most notable contributions to the IWLA have been threefold. Preparing and responding to requests for submissions to various consultations, including the long-term strategy for the court service, more recently the Citizens Assembly, but also making submissions even when they weren't quite requested, for example, to the Houses of the Oireachtas in relation to their advertisement for a parliamentary draftsman, which we thought wasn't the best phrasing. She also did Trojan work on Article 41.2 and preparing the IWLA's position and really exploring that topic, reaching out, collaborating with various other organisations such as the National Women's Council and IREC. And finally, organising the amazing Celebrating a Century dinner last year in November in King's Inns. This was a huge task involving multiple partners and stakeholders. Cathy said to me that through IWLA, she had met 3 Irish presidents in the last year. So if that isn't an incentive to get involved with IWLA, I don't know what is. But thank you so much, Cathy. We're sorry to see you go, and we know that you're still passing things our way, and we're able to rely on you for support. You may be here as well, and if so, thanks. And another thing that would happen at my welcome at the gala dinner is just to promote the IWLA and to showcase really what we've been up to since the last gala. And we've been very busy over the last year, and I really didn't want to let the wonderful work of the committee go unmarked. So just a brief run through of events since our last gala. After our gala last year, we launched a blog competition and took in submissions on the topic of the Sex Disqualification Act, or Removal Act 1919. In mid-November, we had an information session on Article 41.2. We launched with Hannah Fine Art a signed print entering the 4 courts. It was signed by Mary Robinson and Chief Justice Susan Denham, and proceeds from the sale went to charity. I believe there's still a few of that limited edition prints left from Hannah Fine Art. As I said, in November, we had the Celebrating a Century dinner with a keynote address from former President Moira Mcnally, a fantastic event. And we started off strong in 2020 with an event in Davy with Mara Curtin, who talked to us about maximising our financial future. For International Women's Day this year, we again had a movie screening of Erin Brockovich in the Lighthouse. As I said about the presidents, Cathy and I were honoured to represent IWLA at the Oris, when we were invited to an International Women's Day event by the president. And then COVID struck. But we did rally, and we managed to turn some of the events that we had planned for the rest of the year into webinars. And we were able to have a really amazing series of webinars, nearly one a week, with some fantastic speakers, culminating in our AGM in July with the ambassador, the ambassador of the Federal Republic of Germany in Dublin. And at the AGM, we welcomed a wonderful new committee with some long-standing members staying on and some really welcome new additions. We had a super strategy session after that to set our goals for the year. We set up a junior subcommittee, as I said, a junior member subcommittee, which has really been brilliant. So much ideas and so much support, and really is allowing us to do more than we were able to before. And we kicked off our webinar series again with a session on the patriarchy, amongst other things. You have to have that in there, given by Sharon Dillon Lyons, BL. And we have lots of other events and 2 webinars already planned for early next year. So without further ado, it's finally time to hear from somebody else other than me. In normal years, our IWLA president, Catherine McGuinness, might say a few words and shake the hands of the awardees as she gave them their certificates. Unfortunately, this year we had to post the certificates out, and I doubt there was any handshaking even with the postman at the door, but we still do get the pleasure of hearing from our awardees. It is very telling when you ask someone for a short bio and they have achieved so much that the short version is still very extensive. And that was true for both our awardees tonight. So I won't take you through all of their career highlights, but to save time, I've written a short kind of template that seems to work for both women. They were born in the country. Interesting, both women use the word native in their bios, Sligo native, Limerick native. I just don't think you can say Dublin native, it doesn't fit for me. Then in different orders for both, they either went abroad and then went to NUIG, or went to NUIG and then went abroad, and then they come home and become heads of their respective professional bodies. So that's the short summary. So first of all, we will hear from Michele O'Boyle. Any solicitor in the country will be very familiar with her face, as her informative and comforting emails arrived in our inboxes on an amazingly regular basis throughout the pandemic, and all the changes and questions that came up as a result of COVID-19 and our reaction to it. So I personally would like to thank her for that, and I'm so glad she was our president during this difficult year. So I'll hand over now to Michele O'Boyle.
Thank you, Maeve, for your very warm introduction, and thank you for giving us such a whistle to a stop of the work of the IWA. You've been very busy, I have to say, and thank you for doing that. But today, or this evening, is a very special evening, as it marks and celebrates the role of women in leadership roles. As a profession, we currently have outstanding women at the helm in many of the most senior and most significant legal positions in this state, including Minister for Justice, Ms. Helen McEntee, the first ever female president of the High Court, Ms. Justice Mary Irvine, President of the Circuit Court, Ms. Justice Patricia Ryan, DPP Claire Loftus, my joint award winner, Moira McNally, Chair of the Bar Council, and many, many others. 52% of the solicitors' profession are female, and in fact, the solicitors' profession was the first profession worldwide in 2014 to reach gender parity. We have therefore made great strides. However, regrettably, the movement towards leadership has been slow to reflect women's participation in the legal profession. Sometimes, female lawyers choose to leave the workforce once children arrive, and perhaps most commonly, their ability to spend time pursuing a leadership role is well down the list of priorities behind family and everyday legal work. We must ask ourselves why, and how can we change this? Most people, outside of lawyers that is, under the age of 50, would be surprised to learn that it was as late as 1975 before Irish women won the right to be selected for jury service, and that fight had to be taken all of the way to the highest court in the land to give them that right. The obvious impact of women serving on juries is the very same as the obvious impact of women in leadership roles. They have a different insight, a different perspective, different experiences, and a different mindset. These differences provide a necessary balance in all businesses, and particularly in decision-making. To create a successful working environment in the modern world, internal culture needs to be both diverse and inclusive. However, positive change will not happen by itself. We need to take conscious action that is both deliberate and followed through. One of my priorities during my term of office was to bring into sharp focus women in leadership roles. Women leaders instinctively know how to inspire future women leaders. Women tend to open the door for other women, rising through the ranks behind them, and this is essential, particularly in circumstances where women continue to face obstacles through employment progression. In my experience, women both bring subtle and substantive cultural shifts to leadership positions in every industry, and law is no exception. They understand the challenges that are specific to women lawyers at every stage of their careers, and they constructively work to create cultures to help both men and women to succeed by being more inclusive, collaborative, and supportive of true work-life balance. As a society, I firmly believe we do in fact recognise the benefit of the input of women in decision-making. And for that reason, women throughout this island must continue to be encouraged, empowered, and facilitated to participate in decision-making processes at all levels, and to provide significant influence in decision-making and policy outcomes. We must continue to ensure that there is no gender bias in allocation of resources or allocation of positions, so that the necessary diffusion of rights and duties in a modern democratic society are met. It was a particular honour for me to represent and lead the profession during the centenary year of women being entitled and permitted to enter the profession. From the outset of my term of office, I recognised that leadership is about privilege. It's not about power. And privilege brings great responsibility. I pledged to my colleagues that I would represent the profession to the best of my ability and discharge my responsibility to the profession and the public to whom we owe a duty. And receiving this prestigious award is a welcome recognition that I have done just that and done my very best. I was very fortunate to have had the complete support of the Law Society Council and the input of the outstanding volunteer Law Society committees. And together, we worked collaboratively and constructively to navigate the uncharted waters of the pandemic, which evolved with such speed and with such certainty. For that, I was grateful. In conclusion, I fully recognise that women sometimes struggle with their own self-belief. I certainly did. Sometimes we need to develop a thick skin and an unshakable sense of self-belief. I have learned that it is important not to be afraid to make decisions, but it is equally important not to be afraid to make mistakes. It is truly impossible to live life without failing at something, unless, of course, you live life so cautiously you may well as have not lived at all. And that, to my mind, is the greatest failure of all. I am most grateful to the IWLA to have considered me a worthy recipient of this prestigious award. And I am particularly delighted to share it with my friend and colleague, Moira McNally. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks so much for your considered words. And I already have a lot of questions for the Q&A afterwards.
I'm mute myself now.
Yeah, lovely. So the other recipient of the award this evening is Moira McNally, Senior Counsel. I had no interaction with Moira until we started planning this event. But, you know, from the very start, she's been very responsive, and, you know, you could really, even through the emails, get a sense of her friendly nature and kind of easygoing attitude, and encouragement as well, you know, of our plans for this evening. I also know that she's very forgiving, and she will, anyone that may have said that she was from Limerick earlier on tonight will will be forgiven. Leitrim is the correct county. You know, Michele is obviously the fourth female president of the Law Society, but Moira is only the second female chair of the bar, the last being Mela Carroll 41 years ago. And it's interesting, you know, I mentioned the similarities and in maybe the career paths of Michele and Moira, but it's also similar, you know, interesting their focus now. Michele having women in leadership as one of the themes of her presidency, and Moira having as a key priority promoting diversity and inclusion within the profession and ensuring it is more reflective of society in general, which is just so important. So another very deserving recipient of this year's award, and I'll hand over now to Moira McNally.
Good evening, everybody. Firstly, I must apologise for the fact that I haven't had a chance to get home yet, and I was afraid that I would get stuck in traffic, so I'm still here in the office. But having said that, I just want to say that I am hugely humbled and honoured by the award by the Irish Women Lawyers Association, and I am happy to accept this award not only on my own behalf, but on behalf of all women at the bar, those presently at the bar, and those who have gone before us. It's strange in one way that I am only the second female chair of the Bar of Ireland, and it's even more strange to consider that my female predecessor was chair 41 years ago. But in considering that time leap, if you look at the history of the bar, if you go back to 1901, a female by the name of Ms. Weir Johnston had the temerity to write to the benchers of the King's Inns and ask, could she become a student and a member of the Irish Bar? And in 1901, the benchers of the King's Inns directed the Under-Treasurer to respond in writing in the following: it was not competent for a lady to enter the inn as a student or become a member of the Irish Bar, so ordered. I'm delighted to say that almost 120 years later, despite the motto of the King's Inns being nullimus mutari, we do not change, the very fact is that the Bar of Ireland has changed, and has changed for the better. It's taken a long time, and if you look to November of 1921, the first woman called to the bar was Frances Kyle, and on the same day her colleague called was Avril Deverill, and Ms. Deverill in 1921 was the first woman to practice at the bar. When she entered the forecourts, the concern was, what would she wear? How would she dress? And the editor of the Irish Law Times is recorded as saying, lady barristers wear the same wig and bands as men. It is regarded as very becoming to the lady wearer. So I'd like to think that now, some 99 years later, with more women at the bar, but not sufficient in numbers, we are still wearing the same gear as our male colleagues and practicing to the best of our endeavours and equally with our male colleagues. In 1973, Professor Yvonne Scallon was the 100th woman called to the bar. So when you think about it, it took 52 years to have 100 women called to the bar. Presently at the Bar of Ireland, 37% of all practicing barristers at the Bar of Ireland are female. Junior counsels make up 84% of the bar. Of those, 41% are female, and the remaining 16% represent senior counsels, of which I am one. But I, amongst my female colleagues, I am only one of 18% of female silks, female senior counsels. I was delighted that the membership of the Bar of Ireland saw fit to re-elect me to the council this year, and also ecstatic at the thought that my colleagues on the council saw fit to direct through their votes that I would be the chair, in that I take that as encouragement and underscoring of their belief in the ideal that I stand for, and that many of my female colleagues stand for as well, which is that we seek and aim for gender equality and greater diversity at the bar. We have not reached the state where the Bar of Ireland represents 50% women and 50% men. As Michele stated, that was a goal that was achieved by the Law Society in 2014. We are striving to attain that gender equality. This year was the first year for the new year people coming in October. We had 80 people coming in to become practicing barristers. 40 were women, 40 were men. That is the first time we have had parity of entry of members. So slowly but surely, and particularly when you consider 52 years to get 100 female people called to the bar, we are getting there. There have been great strides made in the last few years where Ireland has become a more open and diverse society. And that diversity in society is being recognized at the bar as well. And I like to believe that some of the great changes in the statutes that have been obtained and attained in the last decade are there because of the endeavors of my colleagues at the bar and colleagues in the Law Society. Changes in statutory provisions which have allowed for equality, greater equality, where your gender shouldn't be a bar, where your sexual orientation shouldn't be a bar, where we're aiming for and obtaining greater liberalism. And it is through this liberalism that we could become more open. And by becoming more open, we recognize the equality of each person, regardless of creed, regardless of color, regardless of religious belief, regardless of orientation or gender. And it is with this greater diversity that we will see greater changes, not only within our own profession, but within society generally. And with those aims in mind, organizations such as the Irish Women's Lawyers Association, they have not just forced a way forward for us, but they have also led not only its own members towards greater belief in themselves, greater belief in their right of equality and right to equality, but greater belief that they too are equal as decision makers within this society. And we are seeing that with, as Michele mentioned, Minister for Justice who's female, President of the High Court who's female, President of the Circuit Court who's female, previous Garda Commissioner who was female, retired Miss Justice Susan Denham, and the multiplicity of females who are now sitting on the bench and are our decision makers. And as Michele has already stated, it is through our becoming decision makers that we will see the value in equality. I'm not going to say any more on the subject, otherwise I could be here for hours talking on the subject, and I think you have the power of muting me by pressing the button. So on that particular point, I would just like to say again, not only on my own behalf, but on behalf of all female practitioners here at the Bar of Ireland, thank you so much. And also thank you for all of the hard work you have done over the last decade. And as they say, a lot done, but we all have a lot more to do. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Moira. You started, or you finished where you started there about the, thanking everyone that had come before us. It's such a good point, and that goes for the IWLA as well. Yeah, it goes for everybody. So now it gives me great pleasure to hand over to last year's awardee, Irish Women Lawyer of the Year 2019, Senator Ivana Bacik. I hope she's here, and she is going to host a fireside chat, in as much as we can do it socially distanced and remotely, with Maura and Michele, and ask them a few questions. So I hope Ivana is here and can come off mute.
I'm here.
Okay.
Yes, Dave. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening,
And thank you so much for the invitation to be here. It's such a pleasure and a huge honour for me last year to have been given the award from the Irish Women Lawyers Association of Women Lawyer of the Year. And I feel so nostalgic, and I felt so nostalgic watching all the lovely photos being tweeted of last year's evening, a wonderful evening in the sumptuous surroundings of Blackhall Place, where we all gathered in what seems unthinkable close proximity in a large gathering, all dressed up. I see Nolene and others sending messages about the sort of celebrations we had then. Well, we can't do that tonight, unfortunately. We're all on Zoom and we're so familiar with that. But I'd like everyone just to sit back, imagine we're all by the fireside gathered together. And that's really the basis for this fireside chat. And it's so great to see so many Women Lawyers Association members here. I was one of the people who founded IWLA right at the start, 2 decades ago now. Maeve spoke about that conference that the wonderful late Twinkle Egan organised at Dublin Castle. In fact, this November, we were to have another gathering of women lawyers to mark the 20th anniversary. We had already secured Dublin Castle, but obviously it wasn't to be. But it's great to see the organisation going from strength to strength and continuing to provide such solidarity and such a support network for women working as solicitors and as barristers. So it's great to be back, and Bami Dow Narish will be back in lovely surroundings of Blackhall and indeed of King's Inns again. I want to turn to our two wonderful and worthy award winners tonight, and to commence our fireside chat. I was very struck, Michele and Maura, as Maeve was, by the parallels in your careers. It's obviously brilliant and so such fortuitous timing to have a woman as president of the Law Society, as outgoing president of the Law Society, and a woman as incoming chair of the Bar Council for the first time ever, and both women from the West, from Leitrim and from Sligo. So absolutely brilliant. I loved your speeches. But we kick off, again, very striking how long it's taken at the bar, particularly 41 years since Mela Carroll was chair, Maura, until your recent election. Shocking length of time given the numbers of women at the bar. 17 years ago, we did a study called Gender Injustice, where we found a real blockage for women becoming senior counsel at the bar. Then only 9% of women senior counsel were barristers. That was in 2003. As you said, still only 18%. And that's clearly, there's something obstructing women's progression through the ranks of the bar. And similarly, our study also found the same obstruction happening, Michele, for women becoming partners in solicitor firms, even where women were entering the profession in equal measure. I suppose my first question to you both, drawing on your experience, Michele as outgoing president and Maura as incoming chair, and I might go to you, Michele, first. What's holding us back as women lawyers from reaching the sort of career progression levels that we see male colleagues reaching? What's holding us back, and what can be done about it? So, okay. Michele, you might address that.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm happy to kick off. I suppose many women, need to be empowered. They need to be encouraged. And I think at a very basic level, I know, for example, if people who run for the Law Society Council, they need to have an empowerment from their employers. Employers need to facilitate people in the case progression. They need to identify, women who within the workplace who are capable of achieving partnership level, and to encourage and empower that. The difficulty for many women is, as I said in my speech, in relation to children, childcare. You've referred to, I think, the 5 C's recently regarding cash, confidence, all of those matters, and that is the case. But I do think that as a society, the fact that we now recognise the input of the benefit of women in leadership roles and going up the profession, I think that we are probably now more inclined to facilitate and assist them in doing so.
Michelle, and I see some comments coming in talking about the initiative for equal briefing at the bar. So Maura, you might say, what do you think in terms of what's holding us back and what can be done to promote women's career advancement?
Well, one of the undertakings presently at the bar, and it's actually done jointly with the Law Society, was the establishment of the mentoring facility, which is amongst women, where you have a female mentor and a female mentee, where women who have made it as solicitors or made it at the bar are encouraging newer female practitioners, trying to assist them. But that's all very well and good. But I personally think it all goes back to a degree to education, and to a degree education of society, where people without thinking and without meaning it have gender inequality almost embedded in their brains. I mean, you have a ploughman's lunch, you build a snowman, you have a draftsman, boys get blue, girls get pink. There are certain things that are nice about things like that, but when it differentiates to the extent that people believe women cannot be as good as men at certain things, the idea that women cannot make decisions as well as men. I mean, the reality is women have only been decision makers for the last century. And for the first 1900 years of our existence as recorded in modern history, if you can call it that, for the last 1900 years, men haven't exactly made a great hand of it. And in fact, if you take those leaders in the world who have been men involved in wars over the last century, they haven't exactly made a great fist of it. So women have to be encouraged more, not only through education, but through educating society as to how it thinks, educating society as to how it believes. I mean, we are getting there, and there is still, in my opinion, and I don't mean to insult anyone with this opinion, but there is a generational gap. I'm kind of the middle generation. There's a younger generation who have great faith in themselves, and I think that is absolutely brilliant, and I'm delighted for them, and onward may they march. My generation, I'm probably a little older than a lot of people here, but my generation, we're still fighting. We're still fighting to achieve what the next generation already have. And there is a generation that has gone ahead of us, the older generation, who accepted it, who when they got married had to give up jobs because that was the normal, who accepted what they were told by the male, whether it be from the pulpit or the politician. It was ingrained in them through the educational system at the time. So we are changing it, and we have to accept and acknowledge that we are changing it, but it isn't going to change overnight. But as long as we believe that we can change it and have belief in ourselves and encourage ourselves, I think there is and are greater strides to be made and can be made.
Yeah, I have to just add, I agree with everything Maura has said, and I think the key is self-belief. And we really have to be kind to ourselves, because women very often beat themselves up and they believe that they're not capable of achieving success. And of course they are, but they must have that self-belief. And that's why, you know, as women, we can encourage one another, you know, in that self-belief.
Thanks so much for those inspiring words. And both of you, you know, in your own speeches, I think have set out such a powerful indication of why you're such great role models. And a lot of this is about being role models. So that optimism you have about the next generation, about the greater levels of self-belief among younger women, I think you're quite right. I see it in my own students. I think it's really encouraging for all of us. Michelle, you mentioned the 5 C's. And I thought that's worth referencing. This was from a report I did in 2009 on women in politics, where we found, based on the evidence available, that women are held back in a whole range of careers, including law, including politics, by what we term 5 C's: lack of cash, lack of childcare, an old boys culture that prevailed in most settings, and a lack of confidence, which goes to that point about self-belief. Those are the 4 C's common to many professions. The 5th C in politics, I have to say, candidate selection procedures in political parties. Perhaps not so applicable in the bar or the solicitor's profession. but you might say there's a fifth sea of clients, and and I'd love actually to hear from both of you about clients, about do you think there's anything that that, for example, makes women less likely to succeed in law because of client attitudes? Maura, I'll go to you first, because you mentioned education is crucial, that people don't see women as being capable in some ways. Now, clearly that's changing, but is that still an issue?
It is changing, and you will always have the aberration who still believes in the old style, if I can call it that. It's societal. I mean, for example, a male barrister can say to the male client, oh, let's go to the bar, let's have a drink after the case is over. A female barrister doesn't really say that to the male client, because it would be frowned upon by society and might be misinterpreted. And again, that's down to, unfortunately, the way society perceives things, and that then gets impressed upon people in the way they think themselves. But it is changing, and it should be entirely premised upon merit and capability and capacity. That's what it should be based upon. And I suppose at the bar, the old rule of thumb is you're only as good as your last brief. So you may not get the next brief if you haven't succeeded in the first one that you had and the one that you were running, the one they were watching you doing. So you have to succeed. And I think it's harder for women because the men automatically, as you say, there is that old boys club, and there is that attitude of the boys go to the golf club, or the boys go for the game of golf, or they go for the pints after the case or whatever, and they seem to create that greater rapport on a friendly basis, which is good for them. But it should be professional. It should be entirely based upon your capacity, as I say, your capabilities, and upon your merit. But is society meritorious? Is it a meritocracy? That's another debate, I think.
Now we're getting into existential questions, I think, Maura. Michele, I wonder, what's your thought on that? And I should say that in 2003, we did that gender injustice survey. There were based on a survey of women and men practitioners, and we found, particularly among women solicitors, a lot of references to that cultural aspect. Maura refers to their golf outings in particular being highlighted by women as an area where they felt excluded, they weren't invited to participate, yet that was where a lot of the business was being done, the clients were being generated, and so on. What do you think about that? Is that still a feature, or is it? And I see Minister Josepha Madigan is back, and I'm going to ask you her question in a minute. Michele.
Yeah. And I have to say, I mean, I personally haven't felt that my gender was any barrier to sort of being successful in my practice. And I don't feel that clients have considered my gender in terms of would they go to me or to go to someone. I really haven't actually felt that. I think perhaps maybe, many years ago that was the case. But I think that, we're living in a very progressive society. And I do think that people, consult a solicitor or consult a barrister on the basis of merit, on the basis of referrals. So quite honestly, I don't feel it's a factor for me and for the solicitor's profession.
Thanks for that, Michele. As I say, Minister Josepha Madigan is back with us. You're very welcome. And I see saying that she was, and in fact, I hadn't realised that, Josepha, until I saw it, that she was the first woman lawyer to sit in cabinet ever in Ireland. Now, there's quite a number of women lawyers in the Dáil and Seanad, but the first woman to sit in cabinet. And what can we do to attract more women lawyers in? Josepha, would you like to ask that question yourself, or have you any comments? And in particular, I'm going to ask Maura and Michele their view on quotas in a minute. What's your view on the merits of having a quota of sorts, or some sort of target or statutory target for gender representation? Minister Josepha Madigan, if you're here.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I was called there for a vote. Of course, typical, we go up for the vote. We're in the convention centres, the temporary Dáil, and then there's no vote. So anyway, I'm back. I remember when I was appointed to Cabinet back in November 2017. Obviously, I'm not there now. I'm Minister of State, but I did serve a Cabinet for 2.5 years. And Ken Murphy, who was still actually the Director General of the Law Society, contacted me and he said, do you know, Josepha, you're the very first female solicitor at Cabinet. And he said, and also barrister, since the foundation of the state. So I was actually more shocked about that than being appointed to cabinet was the fact that I was the first female lawyer. So I've been on this mission to recruit more female solicitors. And when you think of there are 52%, as Michelle said earlier, you know, so it's quite incredible. We really need you here. We're only at 23%. Ivana, you know about that better than anybody. I just first of all just want to congratulate Maura, my mum and my sister are barristers. So you know, great love for great to see a female at the helm. And Michelle did incredible work as president of the Law Society, and just kudos to both of you. I'm really delighted to even come in briefly to this. But yes, and my question to both of you is how can I entice, or how can we entice more female lawyers into politics? Ivana will know the skills are easily transferable, and it would be great to get more in, and just what your views are on that. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Minister. Michelle, I might ask you first, what do you think? How can we get more women lawyers into the Dáil and Shannon and then into cabinet?
Well, I suppose I know that Josepha has probably traded her practice in other words, she's not practicing as a lawyer now, she's practicing exclusively as a highly successful politician. And I don't think that there is a role for a part-time lawyer and part-time politician. I mean, I don't know. I think it's the same barriers probably to in any profession. I think that is it how many? What's the percentage did you say of females are in politics?
23%. 23%. Yeah, very low.
It's very low.
40% in the Shannon. For the first time, we have 40% in the Shannon, so it makes a big difference. Actually, but the Dáil is still very poor.
I suppose for me, even as an outsider looking into politics, I suspect it's a very difficult life. It's a very demanding life. You have your clinics. It's probably something which it would encourage a particular type of personality. Not every personality, I think, would be suitable, to be involved in politics. But I think it's the conundrum of balancing your home and work life with such a very demanding career as politics clearly is. And also, I mean, with politics, you're not in control of your own destiny. As a practitioner, you're in control of your own destiny insofar as you practice for a law firm, or you practice for yourself. With politics, as we know, it's very fickle. Fortunately, Josepha and indeed, you, Ivana, have been very successful politicians, and it's unmerited, of course, but it is fickle, and that's something which I think women would be concerned about. They could be in a very stable position today and find themselves out of a job very quickly with the falling of the government.
Thanks for that, Michelle. And what do you think about quotas? I mean, and I might come back to Josepha on that, because of course, while 23% is far too low, it was the high we had ever achieved up until 2011 was 18%, only 18%. And we brought in a quota law, which first went into operation in the general election of 2016 and saw a huge increase, in fact, in the numbers of women elected from 18 to 22%. Now, the last election, unfortunately, we didn't see any great increase, but the quota will rise from 30% of candidates. Political parties must run at least 30% of each gender to 40% in 2023. So I think many of us are hopeful we'll see an increase then again of women entering the Dáil. But what do you think, Michelle, in terms of quotas within, for example, within the legal profession, or for chairs or presidents, or indeed partners in solicitors' firms? Is that a step too far?
Yeah, well, I suppose before I answer the question, to give you a little background, in accordance with our rules in the Law Society, the president of the Law Society, as you probably know, is elected from a pool of council members, and the election, as matters stand, is based on seniority. So what we need to do is we need to increase the number of women who put themselves forward for election. And again, going back to what I said earlier, employers can and should facilitate employees to do so. In fact, this year, immediately prior to the Law Society elections, I wrote to the senior partners in every practice in the country, asking them to actively facilitate and to encourage female solicitors to put themselves forward for election. And I think, if the election of the president of the Law Society was based on something other than seniority, I wouldn't really be a fan of quotas, because I believe that women can and should reach senior levels based on the merit and not on the basis of their gender.
Maura, do you take up that point, that issue about the pool of applicants? If only 18% of senior council are women.
I see the positive side behind positive quotas. It worked in America in respect of race. It has to be used to address an imbalance that society itself appears unwilling to address. I mean, a curiosity about voting in this country has to be in respect of the presidential elections. When you look at the overwhelming support that the two previous female presidents had, Mary Robinson, Mary McNally, incredible support throughout the entire society when it came to election. And yet that does not translate when it comes to an election to Dáil Éireann, whether it be to the Seanad or whether it be as a Teachta Dála. And we can address that. Some people will say it's a very negative step to take, but I think you should consider imposing greater quotas. 30% of female candidates is not representative of society. For it to be an appropriate quota, in my opinion, if we're trying to encourage women into politics, it should be reflective of society, and therefore it should be 50% and 50%. Or maybe, I think Irish females now represent, is it 51% and 49%, but even so, it should be 50%, not forever and ever, but 50% until that particular mountain has been climbed or that particular barrier is lowered, so that we have proper equality within society, where women, regardless of your socioeconomic standing, can run for election. But you do have, as you say, all the C's against people and against women in every walk of life, but particularly it would appear in politics, where, you know, maybe it has been seen as the fiefdom of men for too long. And possibly the answer is to say, well, look at what they did for the last whatever number of years. Maybe it's time for more women at the helm and let women make the decisions. But I do think gender quotas on a more equal basis should be considered.
Well, thank you for that. And I have to say,
you need a creche. Sufficient creche facilities at the Dáil for the children of both men and women representatives.
Well, I absolutely agree. I have to say, as one of the few Oireachtas members who's actually used the creche there, which was set up by women pioneers like Gemma Hussey and Niamh Brannock, who came before.
Perhaps now with Minister McEntee, you know, congratulations.
I know I can see the chat function is going wild. We've only a few more minutes. Can I ask if anyone has a burning desire to get in, if they would raise their hand? I was going to ask Minister Madigan maybe to comment on the quote issue, and I see a couple of other hands coming in, and I also just want to welcome the President of the High Court, Judge Mary Irvine, who I see is joined us as well. You're very welcome, and so many others too. Josita, would you like to come in again on the quota point? And I see a number of other hands up. I think, did I see Noeline Blackwell's hand go up there? No, okay.
Very briefly, because I don't want to take up any more time about politics to dominate. This is about Michele really and Moira, but suffice to say, I completely agree with gender quotas, because we just do not have enough women in politics, and just because we have women on the ballot paper does not mean that they get elected. So the gender quota and having them on the ballot paper is just the first step. It doesn't guarantee an election. Obviously, we still live in a democracy, and then within the Dáil itself. And you know, Ivana, you and I have been on another forum recently where we were talking about Article 41.2, which to me has to be changed, even if it's a gender neutral, clause in that article in the Constitution, to give out the symbol to Irish society, because it's about societal support as well. I'm here in the Dáil here now. I'll be here till 11 o'clock. I'll be here tomorrow night till maybe 12 o'clock. That's not family friendly. So these things have to change. And as Mary Power says, you know, we have to change the system. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Now I see a hand up. James, do I see a hand up? Did I see your hand go up there?
Yes, thank you very, very much appreciate it. This is a wonderful discussion, and heartiest congratulations again to Michele and to Moira. What I'd like to say, of course, while I've mixed views about quotas, leaving that aside completely, it is absolutely crucial that women are seen throughout society, in every level of society, as equal. Because, you know, if we had equality we would not have had the First World War, we would not have had the Second World War. And I really think with the competitive nature of so many men in society, the men need the balance of the females, of the mothers, in order to avoid self-destruction. That really is the existential question of our time. And therefore, you know, in that sense, there's a huge obligation on the female population in the world, never mind Ireland, never mind the Law Society, never mind the bar, to try and save the planet ultimately. And I mean, that is ultimately what this is about. It's like the saving of nature. We rely on these things. And therefore we must achieve the end goal as quickly as we possibly can of ensuring that there's complete inequality, because men will destroy the planet and they'll destroy themselves.
Thank you for that. No pressure on us then.
No pressure on you at all.
Thank you. I think thank you for that. And I think you know, that it's somewhat chilling, but nonetheless there's a truth in there. I think because we do want to finish on a high note, I'm going to just ask our two wonderful and worthy award recipients if they can give us, just in a couple of minutes, each of you, a career highlight today. So we're going out on a high note. And Michele, I might ask you first, a career highlight for you from your really amazing career, and you know, remembering you are such a role model for so many.
Well, thank you for that, Ivana. I suppose I opened my own solicitor's practice with my sister Dervla 1 year post-qualification, and every year that I remained in practice after that was a highlight for me at that particular point in time. However, being at the helm of the solicitor's profession, particularly at such a challenging period, is probably the highlight of my career, marginally topped by receiving this wonderful award.
Nicely put, Michele, and well done, and congratulations again. Maura, before we hand back to Maeve Delargy to finish the evening, just to ask you, Maura, a career highlight to date, again from your hugely illustrious career at the bar.
I'm going to say there are three career highlights. The first was when I finally took Silk, which is October 3 years ago, after mulling it over for many years. And if there are any senior junior counsels out there thinking about applying to become senior counsels and members of the inner bar, please feel free to come and talk to me, because you should not vacillate and think about it for the length of time that I did. And I sometimes wonder if I wasted a few years thinking too much about it and worrying about it. Whereas men tend not to do that. They just decide, that's it, I'm going to do it, and I do it. They seem to do that. Again, we're back to the self-confidence. The second great achievement was, again, to a degree, surprisingly becoming chair of the Bar of Ireland. That is a great highlight for me personally. And without being obsequious, also this award today, which is incredibly unexpected. I mean, you don't believe me, Maeve, when I say that, but it is incredibly unexpected by me, undeserved by me, but in the manner in which I'm receiving it, which is not just for me, but for all who have gone before me, then as a recognition of the great Irish female barristers, those before me and those coming behind me. This is the third great highlight, and thank you.
Well, thank you for those lovely words. And I think we'll all disagree with you when you say it's undeserved, Maura. The awards for both of you are so well deserved, and we're just so delighted for you, and huge congratulations. I think, you know, if we could sum it up in one word, you're both saying what we need to instill in women entering the profession, women going into politics, women looking to become senior counsel or senior partners. It's about self-belief, it's about building up confidence, and organisations like the Irish Women Lawyers Association so important in building up confidence, in offering women solidarity and support in what is still a male-dominated profession, both sides of the profession, but which is changing. And I think all of us should have a spirit of optimism as we leave tonight's event. So I'm just going to hand back to Maeve, and just to ask all of you before I do, just to give a round of virtual applause to our two great recipients. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ivana. Yeah, very much agree with that. And interesting, I suppose, you know, I did have a slight concern. We always have people joining us at the gala every year that may not come to our other events throughout the year. And I thought, oh, they're going to think it's too sparkly and too glittery and they're not going to take us seriously. But I think, you know, it just shows that even at a celebratory event, we do manage to get in some really insightful, respectful discussion and debate about important issues. So thank you for hosting that, Ivana. I have to say thank you now as we close this event this evening. Thank you again to the awardees for accepting this award, for giving of your time and thoughts, and yeah, just enthusiasm this evening. It's been wonderful. Thank you to the host of our fireside chat, Ivana Bacik, really drawing out some interesting views there. And thank you also to that's my battery dying. Thank you to the committee. I feel like people say a lot of the time, you know, and thanks to my committee, but really this time, you know, this is an absolute team effort. So many people working on this on various aspects, you know, posting out the awards and sending out invitations to our honorary members of the IWLA. You know, there's a huge amount for an online event, especially when it's your first, that has to be organised. So thank you so much. And again, as I've mentioned, our junior members subcommittee, thank you for your support. I'm fronting this event this evening, but it really was everybody's involvement that made it run so well. And thank you, the attendees, for coming this evening, for supporting the IWLA and for promoting the IWLA. So I think to conclude, the best thing to do was give you that video that I promised. As I said, it was prepared by Jane, a member of our junior member subcommittee. It's a great video, and it shows the awardees throughout the year. So Aoife, if I could ask you to play that video, and that will play us out for the evening. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks again to Jane for putting that together. Fab video showing all of our previous awardees, and a lovely memory now to have. So that concludes our evening.